Yeah.
Afan's laptop had an issue. Can you wait for 2 minutes? If that's all
Oh,
right.
yeah, sure, of course.
Okay.
Did he have a phone, maybe? Maybe he can use his phone to join. Or he can come to your room.
Let me ask. Just give me a second.
Sure. Hammad, what's the weather like in Turkey? Cold yet?
It's getting, I mean, it's raining a lot these days. It's 12 at the moment, not bad, but
Oh, wow.
it's really cold at night.
Oh, windy and cold, huh?
Yep, very windy.
So everyone who's just joining us, we're just waiting a couple more minutes to let more people join, and then we can get started.
So yeah, he's coming. He fixed his
Mhm.
issue. He's just taking a minute.
Great. Why don't we kick off introductions? Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Glad to
Hello.
see everything's working fine. So as I was saying about the format, I'll just repeat for everyone who just joined. We'll have 20 minutes at the end for a question and answer session. So please drop your questions in the comment section and remain on mute, please. And we promise we'll answer all of your questions. Let's get into introductions. My name is Sana. I work at Identifo. And today I'm joined by my colleagues, Hammad Siddiqui, who is an innovation architect, Youza Khan, who is a product designer, and Affan Aslam, who is a global product. And the topic that we're discussing today is how to create technologies that work. And the reason we think this topic is important is because today it's easier than ever to build on your idea. And when we say build on your idea and design a product, we mean digital products, which can be apps, and they can also include websites. So there's a multiplicity of tools available for people today to bring their ideas to life. But we also know that a majority of tech startups don't make it beyond the 5-year mark. And there can be multiple reasons for that, but one of those reasons among those can be the product itself. So how does one begin the process of designing a product that will be successful? And I'll put this question to Youza first. What, in your mind, what does good product design mean, and what does the process look like?
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Youza, as Sana said. So to answer Sana's question, a good product always addresses a need. Now, it doesn't. A lot of people think that a good product needs to be a painkiller product. It's just basically a need that is like medicine or something that is not like a social habit formation product like Facebook or Instagram, but a painkiller product. Those products are called vitamin products. A product is someone that is addressing a need, may that be need emotion or a need that is physical. But you need to always make sure that the need is addressing a particular pain point. This is why user research is so important. You need to really, really listen to your customers, listen to what they're saying, and then address that need. Look at how is your product even making the process easier. If it's not, it's not a good product. This is a question that product designers are always grappling with. They make a product, they design it. Like, is my product any good? And that's the process of iterating. But if you're lucky enough, you get it good in one go. But yeah, that's my answer.
Great. Hammad, how do you feel about that? Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thank you all for joining first. So I think Youza is right. I think that there are like So there's another category of products that's basically not the pain point, but the luxury products. But when it comes to the software or the digital industry, we don't really focus on the luxury items because those may not actually solve a problem of a customer that's just out of if it's brand value. So yeah, I think when it comes to digital, we are mostly focused on products that are solving problems for the customer. I think that's the core idea. And we talk about innovation. I think the definition for me for innovation is something that generates value for your customer. And then we don't stop over there. If it's generating value for the customer, it should also generate value for us, the company, the provider of the service. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
And Affan, what does good product design mean for you?
I think the main purpose of any product is to solve a problem, right? And a product design, I can keep it short, like it's it really basically helps you, helps a customer solve a problem. As Ahmad said, right, from a business perspective, to me, problem solving is not just to solve a problem, it's to solve a problem profitably. So the idea is that a good product design, and when I talk about design, it's not just the UI interface which customers interacting with, it's an end-to-end design. The interface as well as the engine, the architecture, everything. And we need to make it in such a way.
Sorry, can I just ask the audience to please mute yourself and stay on mute?
Right. So yeah, and we should design it in such a way that one is, the resources are optimally utilized, right? So for example, if you're designing an engine, we should make it in such a way that it creates a value for the customer, and that value is financial value. So imagine, like two bars where you have a revenue and cost, right? The cost to make that product and the revenue you can make. And this is where the value is, like the profit, right? The kind of the gap. And this is where our margins are like, right? So it's all about solving a problem profitably for me. So when you're making a product, you need to make sure that you are addressing the pain points. So it has to be a painkiller to me. And that painkiller should have some sort of financial incentive associated with it.
Great. So let me ask you a follow-up question. How do you make sure that you're actually solving a problem that exists? Could it be that you think a problem exists, but it's not actually the problem your users want you to solve? So how would you approach validating your idea when you begin designing the product? And Affan, I'll throw this question to you, but if you would like to address it.
So the first thing is that there are multiple sorts of products, right? That so there is no one category of product. Like when you're talking about like business to business products, right? Like if I'm going to any enterprise, any organization, they have their own requirements, right? So, and they know what their problems are and they want us to solve it. So again, the product gets validated there, right? It may be, like a customized product, but it's, this is where we get validation. When we talk about like this B2C products, right? A lot of tools, a lot of things that we need to basically employ to make sure that that product has real value. For example, we need to go talk to customers. So customer experience research plays a huge role there. Then we need to find a way, there are multiple ways to do that, to gauge whether customer will pay for that product or not, right? Because you can't, again, I'm emphasizing it on this financial factor because it plays a huge role when you're actually practically developing a product. So you really need to find people, you really need to find that category of people, the targeted market that's going to pay for your product. And they will only pay if it's also creating a value for them. So, and when you talk to people, when you do these focus groups and researches, you get the sense of it. So I personally, when I'm developing, I create both kind of products, right? One where there is a direct to customer journeys, and the second one is where we are doing, like business to business. So business is slightly different, where the requirements are directly coming from the client. And the next one is where we go and actually talk to people and try to understand what their problems are. And if we solve them, if it creates a value for them, so that's how I get the validation.
Youza, I saw you shaking your head. when Affan was saying that validation is very important and you need to talk to your audience, because design at the end of the day is about communication. And how do you communicate with someone that you don't know? So what would you say to that?
So validation is a very important aspect of it. And, it's a basic design thinking 101 that you have to, when you're testing an idea, you have to propose a hypothesis and validate it. But the more important question lies, how do you communicate the value of a hypothesis to a client? Because the client is going to come up with an idea and they're going to be like, okay, we think this idea is great. You can't just go and be like, I think this is not great. I think my design bias is putting it. But if you frame it through the customer's lens, if you do a UX research to back it up, the client at the end of the day is like, okay, this is what I think you're right in this direction, but I think this is what the customer wants according to the UX research. So we have a scientific backing to validate our hypothesis. And also we have a much more stronger argument to move forward with our design case or tech case. And another point that I wanted to add when Affan told about Affan was mentioning finance. I think finance and tech is very, very interlinked, and even designers, because product designers measure metrics. You should always be careful. And I see this mistake that startups make a lot. The cost to acquire a customer should always be less than the lifetime value of the customer. This, especially in SaaS products, takes a long while. This is why people get impatient, but you should always find ways in which you could monetize at a much lesser rate, and you can get more value out of your customer at a much higher rate, because at the end of the day, that's how you generate revenue. So yeah.
And Hammad, can I just ask you, so building technology is often, there's an analogy that's used, there's like being an architect. So, and it's an iterative process, there's always growth. And sustainability and scalability is so important when you're building a product. So moving from the MVP into a more complex product is where sustainability and scalability comes in. And it also relates to what Youza was just saying about optimizing the cost. And what would you say to that?
Right. So what I'll do is I'll add to what Youza and Affan did about the problem statement, right? And how do you validate that? And I'll also answer your question. So I think my personal favorite way to, I mean, like Affan was right. So there is no one single way to like validate a problem or a solution, right? It totally depends on the industry, what domain you are in, what kind of problem it is. Is it like a big complex problem, or it's like a small operational problem, right? I like personally find attraction in solving my own problems, or solving problems that are around me with my friends or with my family or like my coworkers. And that's how, like, I'll give you an example. So like in Pakistan, for example, there we have like big amount of freelancers out there, and getting remittances is a big problem because we don't have, the likes of Stripe and PayPal and XYZ. And then like back in the days when I used to like freelance while I was studying my bachelor's, that was a big problem for me. And I think I didn't have the time at that time to be able to research on the problem. But like when COVID happened and I was like, we were all sitting at homes, I figured out a way, and that was like the genuine right way to do it. And then I thought, like, I solved a problem for myself. How about I turn this into a business and I like help others solve the same problem, because I knew who are the people in this problem, and I knew that how would I be able to reach to them using digital means or like offline means. So I had everything in my mind. So I think that's my personal favorite way to like validate a problem. Now, to answer your question, going from MVP to like an architecture point of view. So I think when you're in the MVP, you need to focus. So you have very less time. So I think we like keep hearing this term like fail fast, right? But again, then that also depends on where you are. So if you're in SpaceX and if you're building a rocket, fail fast will not work over there, right? Because you have like millions or billions of dollars of investment. But like when it comes to digital products, where you're like validating like an idea cheaply, there are like multiple ways. So we have now low code or no code technologies. You can like hack a website in like 2 or 3 hours or days. You have like pre-built landing pages. You have payment options available, so you can just plug and play and build up small prototype. Like even Google Sheets people use. So it's so configurable that, there's applications built on Google Sheets. So that's the amount of simplicity we have now as of 2022. Once you do that, like once you have validated your product, once you have, let's say, some sort of validation, you have paying customers or customers who are ready to pay, or you're in the growth stage, you can then start thinking about, architecture and how to like formalize, your startup into a proper company. And then it comes to the technical decisions, right? So for me, when I'm thinking about architecture, a mature architecture, there are like multiple attributes. So number one is, again, the operational excellency. So we need to have procedures in place, and we should be like, focused on delivering business value. Second thing is security. So obviously I don't want to be exposing my clients' data, since if I have like 1,000 customers onboarded in like short span of time, I need to be focused on security. I need to be focused on reliability. So if I have a high demand product, people are signing up every day. I need to be, be able to cater to their demands. So I should be thinking about scalability, horizontal, vertical, whatever that is. And then the two important things that I have is like performance efficiency and the cost optimization. So, and these both are interlinked. And I think Fan initially talked about that. So when I'm rewriting my application or when I'm improving my application, I need to be sure that my application is good enough. So there are two things. Either I buy a server, which costs me $1,000 a month, and my code is so sloppy that I use all my resources, right? Or I can improve my code base such that the resources I use in my cloud, they only on average monthly, they cost me around $100. So these are the two things that I think we should focus on. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would like to add something to what Hammad, and I think Youza clearly said that it was about customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value, right? The CAC and LTV, which is obviously linked to the idea of unit economics. I think I'm really glad that when we're talking about idea validations, we are also talking about the numbers here, because initially, like all design thinking paradigms and other things, like we were not, I don't remember, and Youza can correct me if I'm wrong here, people never used to think about it from the financial perspective. Because they would just focus on growth, that customer acquisition, right? Now, since, like the investment structure is slightly, has changed, investors are becoming more conservative. They ask too many questions about your economics of your business. People have started thinking about it. And because sometimes, I think about it, I live in Karachi. So imagine, if I open a biryani store here and distribute biryani for free, I will have a huge growth of customers, but it won't create any value for me. So growth and value should go hand in hand, I believe, right? So, and so this is one of the major important things. And I think we should definitely add this to the paradigm of design thinking validation. So yeah, just wanted to add that bit.
Great point. I just wanted to say for everyone who's just joining us now, we spoke about this in the beginning, but just please drop a message in the comments. Let us know where you're joining us from, and then drop another comment and let us know what you're hoping to learn from this webinar, from this conversation. We'll spend some time talking to our speakers, and 20 minutes at the end, we'll come to your questions for sure. So save your questions, put them down in the comments in the last 20 minutes, and we'll address them. Youza, can I ask you? So we were talking about tools, and we know when it comes to design as well, there's a number of tools and they're all competing for designers' attention. What are some general principles that you suggest, regardless of the tools you're using, even if you're sitting down with a pen and paper to draw out your design, that you think people should keep in mind?
Okay, some general principles I think that designers should be aware of. First of all, I like to reiterate what Affan was saying. Always design, it's always better. It's not a necessary thing, but it's always better if you're designing for a problem you yourself are facing. For example, I had this rent a dress idea and an e-commerce website because I was generally facing a problem as a working woman to go to markets and buy these customized dresses. I wish there was a platform where I could rent a dress. So that enabled me to design the website in a whole better way because I experienced the pain point myself as a designer. So if you are experiencing a problem that you yourself face, that's great. Regarding tools, I mean, honestly, I'm not picky when it comes to certain tools. Like, I don't care if you use Adobe, I don't care if you use Figma, Miro, all of them work the same as long as the quality of the work is good. I don't even care if someone can use paper and pen. I think sometimes for me, generally, I like to move away from tech and start from paper and pen because it helps refresh my mind. I feel like it works with other designers too. And that's what design sprints are also about, because, you know, you need to remove technology and just rework your brain like it is a sort of a design improv session. But yeah, I'm not picky with the tools. As long as you know what problem to solve, you know what pain point to hit, and you have a solution that customers want. So that.
Yeah, there's nothing
Yeah,
like
I
pen and
comment on
paper.
that.
Yeah.
I just feel like we have like this tool addiction. Regardless of the problem, we'll just think about, oh, let's put blockchain in this, let's put AI in this. Although the problem is different and there's an easy way out to that. So I think that's another problem that we face.
Affan, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I can give you an example. I agree. Tool addiction and tool obsession is something that really, you know, like piss me off, honestly, right? Because, you know, like let me give you a case, right? So we use Jira for our task management. And so I was thinking about, you know, like, so as we were talking about, right, this new paradigm where business is inextricably intertwined with product, right, and technology. So, you know, like I was thinking that what kind of interface I want, right? And instead of, you know, like using Jira, I just, you know, like was drawing things on paper, right? That this is what I want. This, and whenever you're thinking about tools, like you need to really think that you need to step back and think about the problem and the solution you want, and then think about the tools that can help you make that solution. What happens is that, and I think, Sana, you also know about it, right? We choose tools like ClickUp, so on and so forth, and we try to adjust ourselves accordingly. This is not the right way to do things, right? The best possible way is the solution that comes to your head first and can be on the paper, and then think about the right tools for that. So yeah, I completely agree. This tool obsession addiction, you know, like buy this and that, right? I think it was more common when we have a lot of money to burn, right? Now it's not anymore. So people will start learning and start using their existing tools more optimally, I believe.
And
I'll
to
just add
add,
another example. Sorry, Youza, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. I'll go after you.
Thank you. So there's just another example that just came into my mind, and that's about like a couple of years ago. So there's this indie hacker. So indie hackers are solo founders, people who are solving their own problems. Like I mentioned, I have a personal interest in that, so I do a research. So that guy built a job portal application, and that application, he didn't think about the technology he's going to use, the frameworks, you know, because he was in the MVP stage, right? Validation. He wrote the entire application in just one single PHP file. And 2 or 3 months down the lane, he was generating a revenue of about, you know, $10,000. So his MRR was 10,000. Now it's like way beyond that, and now he has the time and the liberty to optimize his operations. So I think, yeah.
And this is a huge problem. I know like real life cases where people, you know, go for these fancy orchestration tools and so on so forth. I remember that I was working at a company where they bought this $10,000 monthly subscription of a tool that would, you know, like do static analysis of errors, and, you know, like, and this adds to your operational expenditure substantially. And like sometimes I feel like that there is no need for that, right? You can use existing tools, you can develop your own at times, right? But the point is that usually when people do not really understand the fundamentals of technology, they start, you know, like employing tools, they start talking about these fancy terms, so on and so forth. I don't know, to impress other people, but like this is actually a big problem, especially like in the era of, you know, like doing cost optimization and cost pressures. We need to be very well aware of what we are using even as a tool. So yeah.
Would you agree though that there are some tools that are absolutely indispensable when it comes to building product?
Yeah, there must be like it depends, varies from people to people. Like I personally use certain tools, like for example, for my task management, I'm comfortable with tool X. For maybe making architecture workflows, I am comfortable with, let's say, tool Y. And so, but it's my personal choice. So it's not that, you know, like, and I have seen this in the teams that people, you know, like pursue it or force people into using particular tools because they think that it can improve efficiency. On the other hand, I feel that's very natural. So, I mean, like, for example, if Picasso is painting, you don't really need to tell him how to paint, right?
So it really comes down to what is actually making your work and your life easier and what you're
Right.
comfortable
Yeah,
with.
don't be so fussed about it. I mean, that's how I would put it. Like,
Yeah.
productivity and product of those tools and engineering matter more than what the process was.
Yeah. But
Just to
please.
I just wanted to add a quick note to what they were saying about tools. I think it can apply similarly to metrics, because what happens is people like to drive these metrics, like you have retention metrics, you have daily active users, monthly active users. And what people like to do is they love showcasing data, but they oftentimes drive metrics not from the goals, but from the metrics themselves. And I think this is where businesses waste a lot of time. You should always look at the business goals and see which metric suits you. And this is what top companies in the entire world do. LinkedIn doesn't go like, we have total number of page views that are in like 50,000s. They go like, an active user is someone who opens and searches for their LinkedIn connection and makes a connection X amount of times. So they've defined the context of their metric. And I think this is something that people need to focus on, because people these days, they like to use this thing called vanity metrics just for the sake of it, you know? So I think when we're talking about tools, we can also consider that we need to be careful about which metrics to choose, how to measure them, because we need to optimize our efforts to make sure that we're not wasting any time. That's just a point I wanted to add.
Yeah, very fair. Actually, that what you guys were just saying reminded me of, when we were younger and we had to do math questions, and the teacher was like, as long as the answer is correct, it doesn't matter what the working was. So the point is to reach the correct answer. So fair enough. Very good point. Hammad, can I ask you? You've sort of seen the Ident journey. For example, we started in one location and we've expanded. So we're in multiple regions. We're active. It's fair to say it's a global product. So when you design a global product, what are some things that are easy to overlook?
Right. I think from a product point of view, the things that are easy to overlook are the difference in context, because products have to be contextual to wherever you're offering. Like a simple example is, if you open Netflix here in Turkey, you will see a different content. If you open that in Pakistan, you'll see something different. In the United States, you will see something else. That's a simple example. But the things that are working behind it, those are a bit more technical. And speaking of technical, another thing that we slip on when it comes to the design of the solution or the architecture or the system is basically, again, the cost optimization. So if I'm a technical person, I would think about, again, the products and the tools I can use, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing as well. So for example, a couple of years ago, we did not have Docker. It's a tool. The challenge was that a code, an application is working on my computer as it's supposed to be. But when I deploy it onto the cloud, it doesn't work like the way I want. So there's a tool, it solved that problem. So those are good decisions. Then there are like bad decisions. There are tools that are not that necessary and you're paying a price for it. So let's say if I want to do code coverage for my code, which is also a good thing to do, but then I have to decide, now I have to make a business decision. So technical people have to be a bit business oriented, like Affan mentioned, right? So I need to make sure that, can I use like an open source version of this? Do I really need to spend like, this amount of money for a license of this tool at this moment? Or should I wait for, when I get more growth from a customer's point of view? So I think cost optimization is something from a technical point of view that, we tend to miss because we're focused on the solution and not the cost of the solution, being a technical person.
Yeah, great. Fair. Youza, Affan, would either of you like to add to that?
Yeah, and let me tell you something, and I think it's basically more dependent on my macroeconomic view, and I think that everyone knows about it, about the investment structure. We really need to understand where the thing's coming from. Like, there is a market behind every business, right? And we sell that product to that particular market, and that market operates in a particular way, right? And obviously, you are able to develop a product when you have money. Usually, you have investors, unless you're bootstrapping, which is very uncommon here, at least in Pakistan. And now the thing is that because investors are now very strict about becoming more strict. I mean, that's what I realized when I talk to investors about their investments. They are not really giving money to burn as much as you want, right? As a lot of companies have done in the past, as we know in Pakistan. The idea is that, and I feel like when you will look at your operational expenditure, there is huge technology cost, and that cost is of the technology resources as well of the technology infrastructure. And Hammad was just talking about these no-code infrastructure. So there are actually, web applications available where you can go and make an entire application without coding, right? From drag and drop. All of these things are being built so that you can optimize your cost and as well as your processes, because you don't have to develop things from scratch. So what I feel in the next few years, this thing that if you know how to build products in an efficient manner from cost and infrastructure wise, then you will lead the market, right? So it won't be about, like the most sexiest product out there. It will more be about making a sexy product in a very cost effective manner. And the point is that it's actually very much possible. And when you can do that, you can build multiple products. So for example, in an economy like Pakistan, we have, like cheap resources. And if we learn how to make technologies in a very nice way, maybe we can go for, like the cheap clouds like Heroku and other things, right? We can really make really good technologies, but we just need to understand, if these tech people are able to understand how to optimize cost, and then we can do wonders. Just wanted to add that.
Okay.
Right. Just another example I'll just add. So, I mean, the reason we are talking about this is, and I'll just back it up with an example. So like Elon Musk just bought Twitter, right? And the first thing that he's doing, and I'm not going to comment on the way he's doing it. Some people say it's wrong. Some people say it's right. But the point is, he is optimizing the costs. So he's not like trying to expand or like get more investor money. The first thing that he did was like, turn off microservices, do reviews of the code because they were not optimal. So that is something I think if we do in every organization, if we focus some part of our time on optimization, I think it's going to be very beneficial.
Yeah, very fair. So my last question before we go on to the audience's question, I can see they're already piling up, is Affan, it's for you, but I'd love to hear Hammad and Youza's view on it as well. So as someone who deals with clients day in and day out, does it ever happen that a client or a customer specifies a problem to you, but once you start dealing with it, you realize that the problem is actually much bigger than what the client or your customer sees? And how do you approach that?
Who is going to start?
Affan, it's for you, and I will then go
Okay.
to Hammad and Youza for this as well.
Yeah, it happens a lot, especially when I'm doing B2B, of course. Like when I go to these, so we get to meet a lot of really big banks and organizations and smaller financial institutions too. Yeah, I mean, naturally, like when they're explaining the problem, they expect the person listening, and this is our responsibility as a product person, to really declutter their thoughts, right, and articulate in a way. I mean, at least that's what they're expecting from us. If they're able to explain everything in an articulate manner in a solution, that there is no point of having a product team in the first place. So yeah, it happens a lot, right? That when you go, so I was working for a bank. It was, like more ethnographic, I would say, research that I was doing. So I went on a field trip. I was just trying to see how the people were onboarding. So it was basically an employee onboarding portal that bank was developing, and we were helping them as consultants there. And so when I went there, they were like, okay, it's very simple. You will go and, like the customer, you just need to take their CNIC. So there was a standard operating procedure and then a couple of fields, and then you submit this information over WhatsApp. We want this entire operating procedure to be digitalized. That's their idea. And they were very clear about the fact. But the reason is that they were, when I went there, I found a lot of issues, like there were internet issues, firstly. Then those people did not know how to use certain things, like apps. So for example, they were taking, like weird pictures of CNICs. I mean, like low resolution and other things, right? So the point is that the digitalization can only happen. So the problem and like making sure that someone is entering the CNIC in the right way. is in itself is a big problem, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
if you know, I mean, people who have familiar with artificial intelligence know that it's a big problem, right? That to make sure that, so the idea is that in your head, like it may be a small problem, but when you really want to solve the problem in the right way, then it becomes bigger. Now, there's another aspect to it. And, like at times, some of the technologies we build are coming from regulatory and compliance point of view. And this is where we at times don't have to be very creative, right? Because this is something that users are obligated to do, right? For example, Nadra. I mean, if you want to renew your CNIC, no matter what their website's like, you will do that. You will learn and use it. Like it's very similar to, and that's why they don't really work on it, because you don't have any other option, right? I mean, they don't have any competition. So it depends, again, varies from client to client, how the problems are, like unraveled. But the idea is that, yeah, it usually happens. Clients are very, like cluttered in their desires. And I think as someone said, like this, at times customers don't know what they want, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Hammad, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think I concur with Affan. Yep. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, Youza, anything?
He gave a very detailed explanation.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Affan
Don't
too.
concur with me, Youza. Challenge. Let's make it more interesting. Challenge my point of view.
All right. Affan didn't mention conflict management.
Let me. I disagree with you.
I disagree with Affan. But no, I pretty much agree with him. I feel like every client is different. Every context is different. Obviously, if you go to Nadra, they don't have much of a competition. So pretty much whatever they say is not gonna, be that impactful. Okay, it's a very overly saturated market. However, I do feel like there's internal conflicts and external conflicts. So when you're having a conflict with a client, let's say they think about something, I think there's this thing called authority bias, and it basically scares a lot of employees about speaking up to their superiors. Because there's also, okay, we need to survive in this company, we need to be in their good books. If we say something wrong, we might, even though the risk associated with that question is high, but because the person in charge is going to be like, okay, I think this is how it's supposed to be done, a lot of people who want to speak up often don't. And I feel like this is a problem that should be evaded, especially in startups, because they're small, so it could be tackled. People who are heads of these companies should come forward and be like, let's have an open discussion. Let's see what's wrong. Let's talk about the problems and let's discuss the problems. I feel like too often they like to create this curtain of, jolly jolliness, rainbows and butterflies, everything's good, because it's an entrepreneurial optimism, right? Okay, our product's the greatest, it's going to hit the market. But oftentimes the cost to acquire the customer gets so high that it turns into a loss. And I just feel like if you have a more open culture to speak about your grievances and your problems, obviously technical problems, not your personal experiences, but so it'll just enable a much more open, a much more holistic product overall.
Yeah, I disagree with you, sir. I'm not going to explain why.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
So thank you for answering my questions. I'll now bring some of the audience's questions in. So I see one from Hammad. He says, there's a few here, you've answered some of them, so I'll read the ones that I also want to just build on. You think, how are you able to keep your client happy up to the benchmark and standard as a product owner and a fund? I guess this one is for you, but if anyone wants to chime in, please. And I'll just add to this, how do you balance expectations from stakeholders and clients and your own team? Because you said, cost optimization is important, realizing which tools to use are important. So how do you find that balance?
Sorry. So the first question is, how do I make my client happy?
Yes. How do you maintain the standard that is expected from you while also keeping the stakeholders happy and your team happy and the client satisfied?
I mean, like I basically deliver the product they want, and you need to stay. Obviously, there is a thing to it, right? So as a product manager or as a person facing client, you really need to have good relationship with them, and you need to work on it, build relationship with them. I used to think that it would be, you know, like I'm sure that we have seen this in the meetings, that people try to, you know, like be friendly with clients and all those things, right? This is not how I built my relationship with clients. Like, it was very simple for me. I knew that as long as I'm trying to address their pain points, they are happy with me, right? And this is how I built relationship. I was very honest with them. That's one thing. If you want to, I mean, I'm not going to say that keep your client happy, it has a weird connotation, but like as long as, you know, like you want to satisfy the requirements, your client's requirements, you need to really be serious about them and be honest with them. That's what I've learned. So whenever any problem happens, I reach out to my client, honestly tell them this is the problem. They get angry, mad at times, right? But they understand. So, and this is how I end up building really good relationship with my clients, which is very important for any sort of business progress. So,
yeah, fair. There's a question here.
Setting the expectations right with the client, right from the beginning, and not like doing overcommitments. I think that's very important. And one should also, like, if you are very formal with your client, if you're not that close as Affan is, there are tools and there are like processes. So you highlight all the risks beforehand. So there's like requirements engineering is its own domain, right? So when you're building a project or building a new CR, you have to make sure that you highlight all the factors in front of the client. So honesty, like Affan said, and being clear and not being like, you know, just for the sake of, you know, getting the client, you overcommit and you say, okay, I'll do this and this and this, and this is the amount of time it's going to take, which is not realistic. And the client knows that's not realistic, but they're gonna like force you to get into that because they know they would want to like make you fail, right? So that's what, So
and you need to know that you need to be good at negotiation too, right? As Hammad said. And I think the thing is, like when I think about it, like our journey at Info, like initially I used to go to these clients and they would ask for anything, right? Because we were a smaller company. And those were really big banks, so they would ask us to, you know, like do really, you know, like unrealistic things, and they would question us. And but now, but even at that time, you know, like we were honest with them. Like there were certain things that we could do where we couldn't, but whatever we committed, we delivered. As long as you're like that, and it's very correct. I see that, you know, like that people go overcommit and then don't deliver. There's a huge reputational risk associated with that. And what happens is that these clients, and I'm particularly talking about like B2B clients, they talk to each other. You know, like if you are at a bank, so, and there's a vendor, so a person will give, and you are working for X bank, so you will have a friend in a Y bank and you will give a call like, how's the vendor? So these things happen a lot, right? So you really need to be honest. I think that really helps.
Yeah, great. There's a question here for Youza from Ahad. And are there any specific tools you use to target local Pakistani audiences to create value? Asking because value is identified differently here as opposed to developed countries, from which I assume in Europe or the United States.
So basically, the tools that you would, so there's a cultural difference, obviously. That is why UX research is needed. Western target audience is very, very different than Pakistani target audience. The devices that they use, the integration of Android versus iPhone is very different. So I think my favorite method to go about solving these problems is obviously conducting user research, but doing field studies, which Affan does a lot actually, and ethnographic studies, going with the client, going with the customer and spending some time with them. Not asking them leading questions, just observing. Because Netflix did this with their landing page, and they saw that people were not actually believing what they said. Instead, they saw what people were observing and what people were staring more at. And that created their landing page, because human beings are complex. You can't always take what we say at face value. So I would say, to understand our culture, to understand a certain problem that we're solving for, go and spend time with the target audience that you're targeting, be it in Karachi, be it in Islamabad, be it in a rural setting or an urban setting. So that is how I would tackle it.
Okay, interesting. Here's a question from Arunima. Which app is your favorite in terms of product design? An example where you think the company is killing it by focusing on customer-centric design. This is for all three of you, I believe. So. You're on mute.
Okay. I think multiple, like I really like Spotify. And then there is I think Bumble is really nice. It's a nice app, right? If you think about their onboarding journey is really cool. They're communicating well. So
and they found a problem. This is an example of a problem with another app that was doing something similar, and they improved on it, right? So like kind of like horizontal expansion.
Absolutely. And yeah, exactly. And if you look at Bumble, it's not so fancy. They do not have a lot of, like animated micro interactions and so on and so forth. But they are addressing the real problems. Spotify is really good. I really like it, like using it. Well, my favorite, it's WhatsApp. I love using it.
I love WhatsApp.
Easy. Yeah.
Everyone loves WhatsApp.
Yeah, it's the best, man. Even from product point of view, it's the best. And also like Airbnb, because they take their design thinking very, very seriously, and they make storyboards out of every experiences. They have this whole wall on their ceiling where they make storyboards, and their app is beautiful. So I really like Airbnb and WhatsApp. I think functionality wise, it just nails it every time.
Yeah.
Zoom is good.
Yeah, except for the 40-minute limit thing.
Yeah, that's a pain point. They should address that one. But yeah.
They do, but you have to pay for that.
Yeah, you have to pay for it.
You also have the number of sessions, right?
$8.
$8.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Hammad, do you have a favorite app?
Yeah, I think I also have a lot of favorite apps, but I think on top of my mind, which I recently used, was Canva. So it's a cloud-based designing of like literally everything: t-shirts, presentations, offline stationery, so on and so forth. So I think like the concept of imagine me doing things on Photoshop on my computer 10 years ago. Now I can do it on my phone as well. And they have like templates, and it's like an entire ecosystem. So I can like put my templates and I can sell them. So it's not just client and consumers. It's like consumers and consumers having a marketplace into each other. The second application, which is not that common, that I like from a consumer point of view, is Stripe. And Stripe itself is a ecosystem. So it has payments, it has accounts, it has identity verification, it has billing, it has, you name it, it has everything. And the way they have organized it, the entire application, it's so easy to consume it. So, we have used it in Adinfo as well. So it's pretty easy, and you basically enjoy while, you're using that. Although it's like, it's all finance and all, there's like, nothing happening, but you get this feeling that, you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Look at the design, look at the speed, look at the optimization, look at how they have structured everything, the documentation. So I think that's one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I'm gonna rush through some of these, sorry. Just so that we can make sure we get to the audience's questions. There's a question from Osama. How important is it to make updates in the product in terms of design? Because recently Netflix updated their UI and users were facing a problem because they were using the old one. That's the question. It's for anyone who wants to take it.
So I think it is important to make updates, but it also depends on context. How big is your app? So with an app as big as Netflix, you have it'll take a while to take. So they're very feature centric. If you take apps like Facebook, LinkedIn, they're really like if they're introducing a new feature, they'll do tons of design sprints on them, tons of A/B testing, tons of ethnographic studies. And I think one reason why they might be facing a problem like this maybe it's deliberate, is they might be A/B testing the UI. So half of the users might be receiving a different interface of the A/B test, and half of the use base of Netflix might be receiving a different interface. It could also be a technical problem. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, I do know that they're very feature centric, especially these big companies. So even if they introduce one slight change to the button or the call to action, they would be testing that as well.
Yeah.
So my assumption is A/B testing, but it could be another reason too.
Here's a really good question from Zohaib Ashfaq, and he's saying there are two questions, but they're essentially the same. It's a question about accessibility and empathy. How can developers make sure they address empathy when they build certain design or make certain design decisions, and to make sure they're aware about the effect it's going to have? And I think, Hammad, I'll put that one to you. How do we include empathy into the development process?
Right. So I think, and it happens quite now in these times, is that if developer is involved in the entire journey, which I think they should be, they will understand the element where you talk about values like empathy and contextual user experiences. So like Youza mentioned about the design thinking, right? So what is design thinking? You basically bring in your potential customers, you ask them what are they doing right now as is, you figure out the problems, and then you propose a solution. So in that discussion, if the developers is involved, they will put out their feedback, and then they will hear feedback from the customers and people who are like working with them, right? So I think that plays an important role, and that's where they get into the non-technical value that they will be delivering. So okay, yeah, they have the OKR and the KPI to deliver this product, but what is the value of this product? What is the actual value that they're doing? So tool, it's just a tool, right? But the tool is going to help and it's going to generate value. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, so like innovation is like you generating value for your customer. So if he doesn't know what value he is generating for the customer, then I think they're going to design something that's not that empathetic.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with this. I was just going to add to this point. There are a lot of ideas of I think empathy, and I think Youza can also talk about it. The one thing I would like to say from the technology side, if we are able to deliver products in a cost-effective manner, then we can also sell it at like a cheaper price than our competitors. And this is empathy for me. So for example, if you are buying Canva for $10, if I'm able to develop it monthly, and if I'm able to develop something more cheaply, I can give it to you for $5. So, and this is where I think like businesses become empathetic. That's how I see it from the dev side.
Yeah. And I think that actually ties into a question from Talal. Is there a path to profitability for startups to become self-sustainable with steady growth, or is the end goal to be acquired by a major player that dominates the industry? Great question.
Well, so which startup are we particularly talking about here? But like, yes, there always have been startups that are listed on NASDAQ and stock exchange, and they had a steady growth. But the other thing is that merger and acquisition is also part of it. So just, I mean, sometimes it depends again on the problem. So if you have multiple competitors, so we make a small ride-hailing service in Pakistan, imagine, and Kareem is operating, and just imagine that Kareem is profitable. And then, like I'm running my, like a small startup here. Then it's like instead of like competing with Kareem, I would like to be acquired by. I mean, Kareem was acquired by Uber, right? So that can be an exit strategy. But as long as part 2 profitability works, I think it's possible. I haven't seen many startups on being listed. I haven't seen many private companies. There may be some private companies too that are that we can also call the startups, and they became profitable. They initially bootstrapped. There must be some. But I think that most of them, usually, I know where the question is coming from. They want an exit strategy without becoming profitable. But if we think about in a like a business, from the business perspective, if I have a startup, I'm okay with both the options as long as I, like I'm profitable. So even the exit strategy can only happen now after, like those post-COVID hype, right? Now, I believe that the exit strategy can only happen if you also, like are going to be positive or are positive. So both the things are the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are many examples, and I think it's a misconception that we get this negative thought about, profitability and all that. I mean, there are startups. Again, I'll talk about the bootstrap ones. So you can Google open startups, and you'll see a list of startups that have been bootstrapped. And what unique thing that they do is they keep their revenues public, including the profit and the loss, right? So one of them is like called Banner Beer. So the founder, Yongfook, I met him in Singapore a couple of years ago. So he's also like an indie hacker. So he started up this startup or an application which does some, social media generation using AI and all. And he bootstrapped it, and now I think the recurring revenue is in like thousands again. So you can look into that. So I think there is actually a path to profitability. If there is no profitability, no one's going to do business, right? Everyone's going to like work or like sell biryani like a farm. So
Like a fun.
Like,
Yeah,
I would love to
there's
sell
a
biryani.
caveat though.
Yeah, I love selling biryani. This is my
I love eating
full-time
it.
job.
That's
I'm a
Afan's
part-time
other
product
profession.
leader. Yeah. No, I agree
But
with this. I mean, like this entire idea of, and it makes me really sad, like this, that profitability was really not one of the priorities of the business, like in the last couple of years. That's what I felt, because they were getting free money. The cost of, I think, cash was very low. Now things are changing, right? Because of certain interest rates being increased and all. And now investors are being very selective about their investment. So things are going to, I mean, like, I really like these cost pressures, to be very honest, because market is changing itself. Things are being corrected now. Market always, it adjusts itself, goes back to the equilibrium, and then, like these are how the market cycles work. So the idea is that part to profitability, Talal, can also be in the sense of acquisition and merger. So they're not two different things, and this misconception should be, addressed properly. Yeah.
We've almost reached the end, and the time is almost up, but there's two very interesting questions, so I'll put them out there. Maybe one of you can answer each. So Asad is asking, what is the balance between improving the usability of a product and the familiarity a user might have with the product already, like which is more important? And Kumail is asking, how do you fight your tool addiction, as you called it, and decide whether a tool is useful or futile? Those are the last two questions I'll put out there. And if whoever wants to answer either of them, please.
I think so it's a concept of like unlearn and relearn. So the changes in the UI, these are not random changes. So I think user would agree. These are based on data, right? On the metrics behind. So how do they improve the existing user experience, right? Initially, when you deploy those changes and you present them to the customers, they tend to dislike it, and that's human nature, right? If you're used to anything, and like tomorrow it's changed, like if I try to change any habit of yours, you will not like it. And like scientifically, if you do that 21 days, you will get used to it, and then you'll try to enjoy it, and you'll get used to it to the newer UI or the newer habit, right? And then you try to rechange that or update it again, then you'll go to the same cycle. So it's human psychology, and people know about it. The reason they change it is for the betterment of the user experience, or for the betterment of, maybe there's like a behind the scenes optimization happening to save costs, or to be more profitable, or to generate more value for the client. So I think that's very normal.
Yeah, fair. And
yeah,
how
I
do
would
you
agree.
yeah.
Sorry, you
Please
can go ahead.
No, please.
So it was just, I think someone asked, how do I make the user changes? I would say there's an economic term called Centrist paribus, which means you change one variable of the entire context and keep all the other variables the same. So when I say context, it means what is the user journey like? What is your user persona like? If the user persona is a serious app, then maybe pictures of the guards or like pictures of the service might be better than illustrations. Or if it's younger generation that you're targeting, then maybe illustrations are the way to go. So when you're A/B testing Centrist paribus, it's just keeping one variable different and testing it with different people, and then seeing which conversion rate is higher. You have to be very careful with this because you can go overboard and you can just make random changes. You have to be very consistent and make one change, because then the results would be, be the ones
It
that
would
you
be
want.
chaos. Yeah.
It would be chaos if I make like 5 changes in one A/B test and then 4 changes in another. It just wouldn't give me the result I wanted, and I wouldn't know what variable is driving what conversion. So you have to be very careful with that.
Yeah, great. That's a really good point. And that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. Many thanks to everyone who joined, to the audience, and special thanks to the speakers, Hammad, Affan, Youza. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. To the audience, if this is the first webinar you've joined, we do these often. So follow our page or anywhere, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, to find out what's going on with us, and join our next conversation as well. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Happy weekend. Bye-bye.